it'd become part of the operating bit, whether you booked the who was going to feed you and where you're going to have it, or you booked uh, the bands you like to have, did, uh, and and argue with the rest of the people that didn't like it, if didn't like who you picked. Well, you waited until the next one came along. So, but we ran into a lot of diversification in that type of way. So, and we, ah, I'm boring myself. But anyway, what else can I say? Uh, you're getting all kinds of information. It's going to be a real mix master, I can tell you that.
You mix it up with everybody else's too.
Yeah,
So
right.
you put the story together.
Yeah, well, you have to put a story, and it's all how you piece it together, yeah, I guess. Uh, things like that.
When they turned this into historic district,
Yeah.
were you involved in the historic thing, or was it not something that you really even
No, well, no, it was Feib and Schmidt that really wanted to do that. They were architects in the area. They owned property, and they got the stockade as an entity as it is, yeah.
Was it called the Stockade when you were a child?
Yeah, well, they called it the stockade. Well, it always known as in history as the stockade. We had Staffa lived up here. She was the girl, and she was a writer, and she was instrumental in a lot of that stuff, and finding and what history a house had, and could trace it way back. And she also spent some time in Egypt, so she was over there, and she had a lot of Egyptian knowledge too, and came over. Susan Staffa, yeah, and she was a cousin of John Bowers, which was my best man for my wedding. Yeah, John and I used to knock around together a lot until we got up into high school, and I got involved with other people then. But John and I still did a lot of things together. But he became a lawyer, so he went off to school and became a lawyer, and has done very well for himself. He got out and he married a Scotia girl. He's going with a Scotia girl, Ann Remington, and they had their own little cluster of friends within the legal stuff, and we had lawyers like crazy all over the place. Everybody was a lawyer. A few of them were judges. A few of them were just politicians. And and a few of them were just come as they go, you know. But that was interesting, all kinds of interesting people in the group, yeah. So, what else can I say? You're getting tired too, huh?
No.
You're stretching her.
I'm just trying to think of other.
Well, yeah, it's trouble. It is trouble to think of things and not in sequence, because you can always put that together.
We can put it together.
But
you have a lot of old pictures and stuff of.
yeah, old stuff.
So maybe at some point.
Yeah,
But-
would you like to get a hold of them?
He's got pictures of the buildings that were here that aren't here now and stuff. So.
Yeah, I don't have that round and ready.
Some other time I'll.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, I got.
Were there Do you remember flooding as a kid here?
Beg pardon?
Do you remember it flooding?
Flooding?
No,
Well,
flooding. Did you have floods?
Oh, flooding, yeah. Well, of course, I remember every flood, yeah. And it got to about, you could, living by the river, you could see how it acted every year. Sometimes you didn't have any problem with even the water breaking the bank in the park due to the weather conditions as it came along. Sometimes it did in stages, which was ideal. And other times it came all at once, or you had a large accumulation of snow, and then it hit warm weather with rain on top of it, and which would melt the snow, and that would come in bulk, which would be like very fast. And you had to get the pulse of the whole valley, everything above us, in order to anticipate what you might have to contend with. The water could move very fast at times, and other times it lay pretty dormant and just be there. It didn't always freeze over 100% because the Mohawk River is active, is moving, and if it was moving in the channel part, it was always kept thin, and it didn't take long to break up. And when it started breaking up and coming down, until it got a real cold spell and you had ice real thick. I mean 2 foot thick. I mean, that's a big hunk of ice in thickness on sheet ice, yeah. But sheet ice would only have to be just a few inches thick to be walked on.
So did people walk up?
Well, people would walk, and then there was always a young folk that come down and look at the river. Looks like a big playing field, and they would be a little tricky getting in from the shore because the ice would be broken near the shore, and they would get out on the ice, and they'd get under a spot that had a warm spot, maybe, and the ice would be thick, but then underneath it was all worn off, and when they walked on it, then it would go through it. Well, then they had problems. Yeah. And we've had some people drowned, and some people got out due to the quick reaction of somebody. Yeah, so.
This is a different subject. Was there a bridge right here too?
Yeah, the old Scotia Bridge ran from Washington Avenue over to Scotia. And it was the old covered bridge, which you can find a lot of pictures around town of that. And that was like 7 piers across there. And between each pier, the local merchants built each section. Well, like each one, they built a barn. Each one had a different roof level, like a series of barns from pier to pier. And that's what the earlier ones did. Well, when they first started building too, they had some flood problems. They got partway built when they had a thaw, and all their work went down to them with a sudden flood. But they eventually got it built, and it became the old covered bridge, which was in operation for many years. They had the trolleys come along, and they used a piece of the bridge to they reinforced it with steel girders and stuff, and put the trolley track across the Mohawk, and went to Scotia, and one went up into Scotia, and the other one went north up to Ballston Spa up that way, yeah.
So where was the track on?
Well, on the dike here, what we call the dike on the Scotia side, alongside the road, which is Shawnee Avenue, that between the road and the river, there's an embankment there at various width. That's where the track ran. That went into Scotia.
On this side, where did it?
No, not on this side. That was on the other side. Yeah.
And on this side, where did it?
This side of the river came into Washington Avenue, went up Washington Avenue at State Street, and from State Street, it would go down toward the GE, down to Erie Boulevard, and they had another track that went up State Street in the early part of that. So the trolleys, they had early trolleys. We understand the old trolley. Then they came out with this new modern car. It looked like a big Pullman car. It was twice as long, and that it would move at high speeds. And of course, then they had that. Those trolleys made the run to Amsterdam or something like that, and were on a regular basis. Yeah.
Well, you said when they were building the bridge, the different merchants built parts.
The different merchants in Schenectady, they got contributions from different people to build it. The old wooden bridge, yeah, as you see in the old pictures, yeah. It'd be best to have some pictures of that. There's other bridge in different stages. Yeah, in different stages, yeah. Right.
We need a bridge over, but just chip in.
Yeah.
Build one, right?
Yeah. Cross over the bridge. And of course, they got to a point where the trolleys used to meet at the bridge sometimes, so they had to put an interchange between the second and third piers. They had a switch out there where one trolley could go over to one side while the other one went by, then they would go back on the main track again. So as time went along, the existence of the bridge changed from time to time. Then they had a wooden roadway that ran all the way across, and they eventually closed that because that was made of wood, and it was getting old, and people were careless with matches or something, might start a fire, and the bridge would burn. And so it was a series of problems that the bridge people had, yeah. Right. And what else can I say? The old Edison Club that used to be at the top of the hill by the entrance to the Western Gateway Bridge there, which became these WRGB studios. That was originally the old Edison Club of the early days, and they used to, earlier days than that, they had, across the river they had one. As a matter of fact, when that had become a derelict over there and had caught fire due to somebody probably camping out there or doing something. I was in Riverside School, and it caught fire in the early 30s, and they let us out of school to see the fire. It was a spectacular fire to have a ringside seat. And then it became a derelict, and of course they finally got someone to rip it all down, and in Scotia and Glendale, they had their own little golf course over there, and then after that it became a cornfield where they grew corn.
The Jumpin' Jacks is.
No, that's over on the other.
Oh, okay.
That's halfway down between Washington Avenue
Oh, okay.
and the railroad bridge.
All right.
And it was across there and nestled on all these big trees on the riverbank. Yeah, yeah. That's right. Geez, I've got postcards. I've got instant postcards that show all that stuff. I don't have them here. They're upstairs.
One
The
day
last
I'll
I knew.
We'll go through 'em.
Yeah. I've got to accumulate all my miscellaneous stuff and organize it. I'm very disorganized at the moment.
You're getting there.
Yeah, little by little, whatever. And meanwhile, back at the ranch. What else can I tell you? We I learned to fly during the war years. I went up to Round Lake. I used to go up to Round Lake, and a fellow named Lou Lavery had a little seaplane base up there. And every time I was up that way, I was always stopped in because I was always interested in aircraft. And he had a number of aircraft up there. And so when I became 16, I decided I'd like to learn to fly and try for a license. And I would drive up there on a nice day and go up for a lesson and such, and then drive back. And I got to a couple of times that I'd call Lou up on the phone and I'd say, look, I'm down on the water, why don't you come down? So he'd fly down, land between the railroad bridge and the old Scotia Bridge. No, that was taken down during the war years. Yeah, during the war years that came down, right? Okay, and he would come down. And there were docks in front of the house. Then Hyde was there with his boat business, and he'd taxi up to the gas dock and pick me up, and we'd take off and go up and fly around and do lessons. Learn to fly and under different settings and how to observe things. And go up to one of the things that impressed me most was take it up to 4,000 feet and put it in a tailspin and tell you how to get out of it. I always felt confident with him. He was a guy that flew by the seat of his pants since he was a kid, so he knew good. And he had a good instructor, a fellow named Bill Kresge, and he was a good instructor. But he'd go up, and I always liked pontoons on an aircraft, because when you're up there, you can always see water someplace. There's more lakes and places you can set down. Actually, with a pontoon job, you could set down in a field if you're careful. You can slide over it if it's that type of a field. But if it's a rough field, it could be disastrous. Yeah. So you'll learn the different things. You fly around to different areas, and just learn to handle an aircraft. Then there were Aeronicas and Taylor crafts, and there was he had a variety of aircraft up there, and I usually fly in Piper Cub or something along those lines, anything with floats on. The Aeronicas were the most popular at the time. Taylor craft were popular. And they had a friend in Sullitt's Coach out of Luscombe. A Luscombe was a small aircraft like that, except it had a skin body. It was metal body. It didn't have the fabric body, see. And he had one on floats, and he used to fly around and come in here and, for one reason or other, and he had a big Donald Duck painted on the tail, so the aircraft always stood out. A silver aircraft with a Donald Duck in full size, not just his head, right? Yeah. So you just learn to do with different things there.
That's pretty cool to walk down to the docks and have an
Yeah, walk down to the docks and go off on a boat or something like that. Or if I had a little boat there that I used to fish, a little tin boat I used to like to go out in, and a little 5-horse motor, and I'd like to go out fishing or just go along and take my dog. And I had a dog that the red cocker spaniel that used to ride up in the bow of the boat and stick there like he was a masthead or something, and just couldn't wait to go out in the boat. So he'd race down sometime to the dock so fast that he'd come off the gangplank onto the main dock, and he didn't stop in time, go right off into the water. But most of the time he stopped and would wind up in the boat waiting for me. He knew where I was going. But there's a lot of water here between the locks, and you got 9 miles down, 2 miles up to Lock 8, and then you got the islands up here, which have a whole maze of back streams up in there, and some of them are filled in over the years, and some are still up in there. And it used to be interesting to go up in the back channel for fish and various other things. There was shallow water where you could see carp up in there, and those were the gold carp, the gold-colored ones. They looked like a big goldfish. They was big, huge, yeah. And they would go up there and spawn, I guess, or just like the warm water in the shallows. And you'd find everything. We had a strange fish up there we call mud puppies. A mud puppy. Now, what the hell's a mud puppy? They look like a fish, and where the lower fins were, they had feet. They could walk. So that was a mud puppy, and that was a variety you used to find over there. And that was an unusual thing. I mean, you see unusual fish all the time, because you never know what got out of the Great Lakes and came down the stream at any time of the year and maybe got trapped in this level. And the reason I say trapped is because Lock 7 was a permanent dam. And they had a hydroelectric plant at the one side, so they always kept the water backed up for the hydroelectric plant. And comes the winter time, the ice went over the dam. The river would come up and it would float over the dam and drop down into the next level. And then doing so, it would break up and be in smaller chunks, of course. But and there was a lot of water down below. And it was interesting that the amount of water we had would govern what kind of water Niska Iowa would get down there, which was a resident of the area for a long time, John Schoolcraft, and his father lived it in this guy. And you would find that sometimes they would get flooded big up there because it didn't get all the way down. They had about a 9-mile stretch of water, I think, and they next dam down was called a flight. There was a series of locks in its row, and each one lock would drop you so many feet, and move in the next lock and so many feet, and the next lock, and the next thing is down at lock 2, which is the down Waterford, which would let you into the Hudson. So there was all kinds of circumstances you'd run into, you know. There goes a little car traffic. Yeah.
It was the first one. That was really the first one besides the sun coming by, I think.
So I wish I had my illustrated stuff that I could present with this stuff so you could see it.
Well, one day we'll go through some of there.
Yeah, but that all disappeared. Yeah, I
Yeah.
they've been picking up tons of stuff out here, and
Well, I know you had when after the flood we were drying some good pictures.
yeah,
Had them laid out in that back apartment, so
yeah. Well, you had
saved a lot of them. So a lot of stuff.
yeah. Here comes it. You're going to come in the door now.
Yeah.
Oh, I think is that Bob?